It is so uncomfortably hot in our apartment right now. Leah closes the door.
I'm not wearing a shirt.
Leah and I have been shirtless in the house for like the last 3 days because we're in a heat wave. And honestly, we've been reading a lot of books as a result.
Because our computers are getting overheated.
Hey team, welcome back to another episode. Today, Leah and I are going to be talking about some of our favorite books that we've read over the last year. All right, so these are most of the books that Leah and I own, and there was a bit of a challenge in picking the ones that we're sharing with you today, but the ones that we're sharing are going to be the ones that had the biggest impact on us personally and professionally over the last year. Leah and I typically read about 30 to 40 minutes every night before we go to bed as sort of a routine to get ourselves ready to sleep. Otherwise, I am very bad at actually getting myself to sit down and read a book rather than scroll on TikTok. So I don't want you to feel like we're these like super high functioning mega readers or something. We're normal people. We just have some book recommendations.
Speak for yourself. I'm a mega book reader nerd person. I'm excited to share these with you. Some of them are really environmental focused, and some of them, because it's me, are talking about sex. But I think it's a really good blend of the things that are important to us, and we hope that you find this interesting.
Before we get into the books, I just want to say thank you to the people who bought the ebook that we released a couple weeks ago. That was very overwhelming for me. It was a huge project that I took on with the help of Leah, and being able to share it with you and seeing such a positive reaction was amazing. So if you haven't already, the ebook is for sale. I will leave it down linked in the description.
Are you going first or am I going first?
You can go first, I guess.
We're gonna make a joke about like age before beauty, but I'm both, so. Okay, so the first one that I'm gonna talk about is Come As You Are. For folks who are in the sexual health world, I'm sure you have heard this book come up. But the premise is from Dr. Emily Nagoski talking about the science and the research behind sexual health. I think what's really revolutionary about this book for me is just breaking down all of those things that you thought were like weird quirks that you had and realizing that you're just super normal. Like talking about the things that make you not want to have sex and the things that make you do want to have sex, recognizing those and then knowing how to turn those on or turn those off is super important.
I actually just started reading this book because Leah talks about it so much, and even though it is unfortunately written for women, I found it super relevant so far. As you can see, I'm only this far into the book so far, but I still think that it's very relevant for people of all orientations, especially if you are a little confused or maybe unsure of what you want and how you want to do it.
Woven throughout all of the science and research is personal stories from people that Dr. Nagoski has worked with, and I think that's just a really beautiful way of sharing sometimes some really dense material, but in a way that connects you to person's stories. And what I love is Levi's bookmark is actually from one of my students. It's a rainbow and it says Dr. Leah. So cute.
So my first book is The Omnivore's Dilemma. This is one of many books written by Michael Pollan, who is a very prominent journalist. He's made a lot of content, both books and videos and movies. You might have seen the series Cooked on Netflix, and that was actually his brainchild as well. I think Michael Pollan does a great job of articulating some pretty dense and often controversial feelings and subjects around the food that we eat. In this book, he charts the journey back through the ingredients of a TV dinner. But he also goes on the journey to forage, grow, and harvest his own complete meal from scratch at the same time. So you kind of see this exploration of food and how it is morphed and changed over the years. It's just very fact-based and very curious in its exploration of this weird industrialized food system that we find ourselves in today.
I think the title itself really indicates what it is. It's a dilemma, right? So it's being really thoughtful, critically engaged, and intentional with the food that we eat. And a lot of the time, these industrial food systems are hidden from us because we just go straight to a grocery store. And so by him breaking it down and saying how much of our like industrial food is tied to like corn and soy and all of these other things. It's so fascinating. I am like not really into nonfiction very often, but I loved this book.
Michael Pollan also wrote In Defense of Food, which is another book about the food that we eat. And I like both books, but The Omnivore's Dilemma is, in my opinion, a better place to start.
Now, one of my other favorites that I just finished reading is Butter, Honey, Pig, Bread. And this is actually a part of something that's called Canada Reads, where each year there's a series of books from different Canadian authors. This is a really amazing fiction book about twins living in Nigeria and their experience of, moving to England and to Canada and their experience of being a part of that diaspora. What I love, as you can tell from the title itself, is that it weaves the story together of these twins and their mother through food. It talks about the food that they cook together, the meaning behind it, and the journey of one of them as she's learning to become a chef. And that almost becomes like her love language. So the fact that there's, lots of diverse identities, diverse sexualities, and it's talking about food.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that we kind of differentiate on is that I'm primarily a nonfiction reader and Leah's mostly a fiction reader. And I'm reading this book right now. That's my bookmark right there. And I think that it's a really compelling, interesting story that explores a lot of subject matter that I think would be very difficult for people to ingest in a nonfiction format. Yeah, In Defense of Food has more information than a fiction book might have on the same subject, but if you have personal fears or inhibitions around difficult subject matter like this, sometimes a story is a great way for you to explore those things. And I think that this tackles a lot of really heavy subject matter, but in a way that's really approachable.
I will say finally that it does talk about colonialism, it talks about racism and how these things are embedded, especially in Canadian culture and a lot of colonial cultures. But again, does so in a way that is through storytelling, through making us critically engage through the eyes of these characters. And I think that's a really valuable thing to do.
All right, so my next book is Let My People Go Surfing by Yvon Chouinard. Yvon Chouinard is the founder of Patagonia, if you didn't know. I have looked up to Yvon as a small business owner since I started my channel, and I really understand and relate to his philosophy in what he calls 10 more years of business unusual. I think what Yvon demonstrates in this book is his reluctance to buy into whatever the norms are in a particular industry. And the title of this book is perfectly emblematic of that. Whenever there is a surf in, it was typical that most employees would go out and surf for part of the day. And the reasoning for that is that a happy person who feels like their values are reflected and their needs are being met by their employer are more likely to last longer in that workplace and provide better work and better outcomes in that environment.
I haven't read it myself, but Levi, again, has read multiple passages of this to me, and I have a lot of respect for how he runs the business and how he describes kind of his philosophy to life.
Yeah, I think that that's something that's so missing with many businesses is a real philosophy, and along with that philosophy, a backbone that is really strict. We decided to give away our AdSense revenue largely inspired by Yvon Chouinard because he is the person that gives me hope for business. Because I think businesses are seen as the large corporations that can be very negative in their overall impact on the planet. But Patagonia, being a really huge billion-dollar business, is still independently owned. And Patagonia as a company works really hard to make their presence on Earth as positive as possible. So yeah, if you're at all interested in Patagonia as a company or you are a business owner, highly recommend reading that.
So the last book that I'm gonna talk about is, I had a really hard time. Basically, this whole shelf is sex books. But this one is the Vagina Bible. I'm not even sure where to begin. As a proud vagina owner for my entire life, there were things in this book I did not know. I started reading this when I was 27, and I'm reading through it and I'm like, how did I not know this about my own body? What I love about the Vagina Bible is that Dr. Jen Gunter, she comes from, again, that like research, science-based approach, but in a way that is really funny.
I think what's interesting for me as Leah's partner and hearing her kind of read through this and seeing her learning about this is that we just don't teach this in any way that's functional or helpful, and it's insane. Like the fact that these are things that you have to go independently out in search of in order to educate yourself on your own body is absurd. And I just hope and pray that like this kind of information becomes more readily available for the generations that follow ours.
I think this book and Come As You Are huge reasons of why I wanted to become a sexual health educator, because the knowledge that is in them should not be something that only a few people have access to.
Right.
We should all know how our bodies work. We should all know how to look after them. We should all know what brings them pleasure.
All right, and our final book is one called This Is Where You Belong. I read this book with very little expectation because I have a geography degree and I know a lot about place attachment, but this was such a reaffirming book to really centralize so many of the issues that we talk about on this channel. Your connection to your community, supporting local businesses, and being a good neighbor are just things that we have kind of learned from our parents and kind of throughout life, but never had the language or like the anecdotal evidence for. And that's what Melody Warnick really does in this book, is that she goes out and she quantifies and finds the data around all of these things that like we kind of know we should do, and just makes it really applicable and really relevant.
One of the things that I really like, and something that we already do, is we go for a walk through our neighborhood every day, usually twice a day. And she literally talks in here about how noticing those small things in your neighborhoods makes you care more, makes you feel more vital and a part of that community. And I just think like, what a beautiful, simple thing to just spend time where you live and to really have a sense of belonging there.
And these are such pivotal things for feeling like you have power and agency in your life and the direction of our world as an individual person. If you can, make sure that that boulevard garden gets watered, if you can advocate for some kind of change to happen on the streets in your neighborhood, those are all things that make you feel like your voice matters. And I think this channel is, basically created out of people's fear that they have no ability to make a change. And this book proves that where you live and investing in where you live is an amazing, powerful way to make that difference. So if you want to dive in deeper on that, I highly recommend you check this one out.
While a lot of these books you wouldn't actually find in like the self-help section or something like that, I think what they all do is they feed your soul in different ways. Because if you are on that journey of self-exploration, of figuring out how does my body work? How does my brain have control over what I experience in my day-to-day life? And then how does that extend to the people around me, to the community, to the neighborhood around me? Just thinking more deeply about the world and the various perspectives in it, I think you're just more engaged in life itself.
It's funny because they seem like very different books, but they're actually all working towards the same goal.
I think it's about how our own growth and education as human beings is something that is really valuable and something that's also really exciting, right? Mm-hmm. That you can continue to evolve and learn and think about the world in new and different ways. And I think that's why I love reading in general.
So hopefully some of these books have given you some inspiration for your next reading adventure. This was a different kind of video than what we typically make on this channel, so let us know what you think. And if you have any other book recommendations in and around this theme, we are always looking for new stuff to read. We're always excited about the next chapter, as they may say.
Oh,
do you see what I did there?
Hilarious book humor.
I know.
Take your clothes off, let's go.
But regardless of what you are reading or what you plan on reading in the future, we want to thank you for watching this video.
And if you like this video, like, subscribe, and then get off the internet for a bit and go read a book.
Yeah, seriously. All right, bye everyone.
Bye.